be free men or slaves. Our cruel and unrelenting enemy leaves us only the choice of brave resistance or the most abject submission. We have, therefore, to resolve to conquer or die.
I watch them fight and die in the name of freedom. They speak of liberty and justice, but for who?
One of the most anticipated titles in gaming history. Now, in this 4-part series, get an inside look on the making of this truly revolutionary game. Inside the process of the creative team, the designers, writers, artists, and animators who brought it to life.
That's what we need. It's going to be thunder in this cloud of smoke.
Inside the technical breakthroughs that made it all possible. And inside the American Revolution, with interviews from war historians.
There was a slaughter on the ground.
Soldiers.
It's guerrilla warfare.
And weapons experts.
They would use their weapon in whatever way they could.
Who show us just how brutal the war really was. This is Inside Assassin's Creed 3.
I don't think people realize how big an undertaking it is, how many people it takes to sort of achieve the level of quality and scope that we have.
Assassin's Creed 3 is a big scale game. The amount of things that are produced per day, that are developed per day, it's amazing.
The team has grown to be several hundred people in 5 studios around the world, all of them working on really specific elements, so the amount of work is just staggering.
And
In total, it's over 30 hours of gameplay, and we have 2.5 hours of cinematics, which is as much as any major length movie, or even more.
We have an amazing team on AC3. Everyone's super passionate about the project.
When we started AC3, we knew it had to be big and ambitious and different.
It's very rare in your career that you get an opportunity to try and go for the gold medal, and we really felt like this was our shot at it. A lot of tired people on the floor right now, but a lot of happy, tired people. We've always tried to pick exciting periods in history and drop the player in, so they're exploring that time as well as our fictional story.
Make ready. Present.
The American Revolution was a very pivotal time because the concept of self-government as opposed to being governed by royals, it was very radical for the era.
It's a great setting for a game because there's high stakes. It was the founding of a nation. It was a time when an individual could make a difference. It was all or nothing. They had to win or die.
The Revolutionary War was an incredibly brutal experience.
This is something you just don't really hear about in the history books, and something we wanted to bring to life in the game.
Connor is our new hero in Assassin's Creed 3. He's half British, half Mohawk. He's humble and more grounded to nature type of person.
We did a lot of research into Native American culture. We've recorded dialogue in their native language.
Excellent. I loved it.
And we've tried very hard to reflect their culture as accurately as possible.
His name, Radun Hagedum, it refers to a life that is scratched, meaning that he had to struggle to survive.
Connor, as a hero, is someone who sees himself as a defender of the people.
He's more inclined to justice than revenge.
One thing to declare our independence. Now, my friend, we must make it so.
Connor's goal is to assassinate key historical figures at major battles, at major events during the Revolution.
He's a stealth operator. He can come out and viciously make a great kill, then blend right back in.
If George Washington would have had Connor on his team, he wouldn't have needed many other people.
Anvil Next is an engine that gives us the possibility to do things that were not possible to do before.
The weather system, the seasons, the formable snow, bigger worlds in general, the ocean. It's the sum of 3 years of improvements that we've built upon.
Brand new navigation system, brand new combat system, 2,500 characters on screen at any one time, being able to cut through interiors in the city. Anvil Next is a massive leap forward in terms of gameplay opportunities.
Cliffs, trees, climbable stuff, the water, that was pretty exciting but also very challenging.
We've got the frontier. As well, we've got two of our major cities, Boston and New York.
Once we dug up maps from the period, we tried to match street for street or major avenue for major avenue. We recreated Boston and New York at about 1:3 scale.
We set out with crazy ambitions for this game, and with Anvil Next, it brings the experience to a whole new level.
The fascinating thing for us is that we can bring history to life. We can actually make it a place that's explorable and vibrant and real. We hope we're offering by far the biggest and best Assassins yet.
Next time on Inside Assassin's Creed 3, combat, weapons, and tactics.
American tactics were really frowned upon by the British.
He was trained in a very different style of fighting to the British soldiers.
Connor is essentially the first guerrilla fighter.
desperate need of replenishment to our mercury supply. Can you help us?
I am George Washington! Is there more salt ration for today? No.
Oi, mate. Want to sit for a round? Quietly. Follow me. He's marching for Saratoga, due east of here. They left 3 hours ago. The man's a bloody butcher. Women, children, anything in his path. You must bring him down.
Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We held these truths to be self-evident. Doing so was a mistake. Since the moment of its discovery, this had been a country defined not by hope and vision, but treachery and greed. And so for every one of us who sought to escape the king's tyranny, there was another who wished instead to control it.
Get 'em, boys!
America was not just a new world, but a new opportunity, with land and resources ripe for the taking. Fortunate, then, that we had the means to fight them. History speaks of a war, one in which men rose up against an empire so that they might be free. This is the revolution you know. Stay a while, and I will tell you of another revolution, the one that mattered.
In this 4-part series, get an inside look on the making of one of the most anticipated titles in gaming history. This is Inside Assassin's Creed 3.
Something we really wanted to emphasize was the sheer brutality of combat in the period.
We've all seen the paintings of the revolution, and death is glorified, death is angelic, but it wasn't that way on the battlefield. It was a brutal conflict.
It feels that you're constantly going through dynamic fights, and that's not something technically we could do in the past. So it was like a personal challenge on the team to say, no, I think we can do this. These armies are filled with different types of weapons. So, you know, you have everything from muskets, you have grenadiers, you have guys with boarding axes.
Being shot by a musket would be an awfully painful way to go. The caliber size of the ball was at least 3 or 4 times as large as anything that any modern military is using today.
After the muskets were discharged, they would charge with their bayonets, what basically is a giant spear, and he has every intention of running that through you.
They would shoot and then they would march, and that hand-to-hand combat was really brutal. And whether it's people using a bayonet affixed on the end of a musket, a small hatchet, this is a kind of killing that is very mano a mano.
All the animations, all the weapons are brand new.
It was interesting to start on a new style of fighting that is much more close and aggressive.
Connor's favorite weapon is the tomahawk, obviously super deadly in hand-to-hand combat. Also the bow and arrow. It fits with his native heritage and it's lethal.
The rope dart, it's a real accurate Chinese tool that we found the references for that series as well. He can use it from the ground, so he can bring the enemy towards him. It gives him the ability, for example, on a tree, to hang someone from above. In Assassin's Creed 3, the one thing that we decided to do is to revamp the fight system from scratch.
We wanted the skill in the combat in the game to be about transitioning from character to character by choosing the right moves, by performing them correctly. It allows you to basically mow your way through large numbers of people if you're good enough without stopping.
What do you do if you go into a bunch of guys with muskets and they try and shoot you? So we had to figure out, can you dodge them? Can you run away? And we've added all these options, but our big one is the meat shield, where you can grab a guy and he gets shot instead. Our mocap guys are stuntmen. We spend a long time with them rehearsing and figuring out exactly what would be the greatest choreography. Ready to go through, like multiple people.
Connor is trained in a very different style of fighting to the British soldiers.
The close quarters flow of the combat that's happening between the punches, the kicks, and everything else is indicative of what happens in the real world.
I'm very impressed by the moves that they do. It's cool to see push kicks and axe kicks and different sort of takedowns that are done correctly and very believable when they're done.
Right hand right, punch to the face, boom, to the throat, to the groin, finish with boom.
This is something new for us that we're really proud of. It's fast, it's fluid, and you go through these guys like butter.
Connor is essentially the first guerrilla fighter. He's someone whose goal is always to move behind enemy lines, to pick off his target, and to escape.
Employing guerrilla tactics, or what we now know today as asymmetric warfare, was something that truly was a component of the American Revolution.
They learned what we would think was guerrilla-style warfare. You sort of hit quickly and then disappear.
American tactics were really frowned upon by the British because the Americans did adapt the tactics that were used by the Native Americans from the French and Indian War.
The first big battle, Lexington and Concord, takes place on a New England town green. And as the soldiers march back to Boston, they are marching along a dirt road lined by stone. It's not the most effective strategy, wearing your bright red coat and march through the woods while some farmer's trying to shoot at you.
The Americans brought a tactic that they couldn't really cope with. They essentially took it away from the battlefield and they started guerrilla tactics.
Next time on Inside Assassin's Creed 3, the hero behind the war.
Connor is the hero of the American Revolution. He's a bit more like Dirty Harry.
Connor is the current day Special Forces soldier. Silent, stealthy.
He's fighting for freedom and he's fighting against tyranny.
In this 4-part series, get an inside look on the making of one of the most anticipated titles in gaming history. Inside Assassin's Creed 3.
Connor is the brand new hero in the game. He's a brand new assassin. He's half Native American, half European. We wanted to build that base conflict into his background.
Why are you here?
When he begins his journey, he has a very clear sense of what is right and what is wrong. He is forever motivated by a desire to do the right thing.
Commander, Connor.
He's fighting for freedom and he's fighting against tyranny.
You as Connor, as the assassin, are the critical part of the American Revolution.
The way that we wanted to deal with the historical figures was for you to meet them sort of over the course of your journey in a way in which the history books wouldn't normally portray them.
General Putnam.
Many of the founders were very tough individuals. Many of them were the equivalent of the modern badass.
Our founding fathers were very hard, disciplined, dedicated individuals who wanted freedom, who wanted liberty, who wanted to express themselves in their own way and not be controlled.
These founding fathers were comfortable with war and they were warriors.
Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes.
Connor doesn't know much of the European ways at first, and then he gets to learn about these guys, these heroic figures. So for Washington, for instance, he sees that very strong guy, and Connor believes in him.
Connor is moving in and out of both the revolution and the rest of the history. Whenever he sees conflict between two groups, he takes the side of the greater good.
We've been working very closely with the Mohawk consultant on values as well on language.
We are Gunyet Gahaga. Gunyet Gahaga means the people of the Flint.
Agorateka, you're doing great.
And our language is called Gunyet Geha.
Every time that he's with his people or in his village, they speak the language, which I think is really cool.
Connor, as a Native American character, is very familiar with Native American war clubs, with the tomahawk, with the bow.
He's got very refined sense of hunting and tracking. He's been raised with the ability to navigate this environment.
Connor has a lot of his ancestry's strength from the Mohawks. He's strong, he's agile, he's able to run in the wood very quickly. It's really his nature, that's really his home.
We had so many different versions of Connor, and he started off really slim, and then we bulked him up by adding fur and cloaks and all these things.
Instead of this thin, lean assassin, like he fills out his coat. He's just a warrior in every sense.
The animation team has built over an hour of new animations just for Connor alone.
We started by looking at lots of military moves and even traditional ones of how you would fight with a tomahawk. We looked at that and we just thought it wasn't awesome enough. So we went really brutal, and it wasn't just throwing in blood.
We put a lot of time into the navigation elements, and we've completely redone our climb system. We really wanted it to be much more organic.
There's so much variety in what he can climb and how he can do it.
Connor moves are directly inspired by parkour.
Parkour is basically all about efficiency of movement, the quickest manner from point A to point B. When you see specific parkour movements, Connor doing a lazy vault or a dive roll, now, the movements themselves are very accurate. Connor moves in the game like I want to move in real life.
We wanted Connor to be a dual-handed specialist, so basically he's ambidextrous, he can fight with both hands.
When he lands, the ground shakes. And when he fights, you know, people are getting knocked left, right, and center. He's very brutal.
He is battle-driven. He's brutality, and he's the type of assassin who comes up and kills without question or hesitation.
soldiers were not really able to go up against Connor. Connor's a killing machine. He's a ninja and a tank with a Wolverine in there.
Next time on Inside Assassin's Creed 3. America by land and sea.
You control the sea and you control the conflict.
What's new about Assassin's Creed 3? Obviously new cities with New York and Boston.
It was a gamble every year that you were out on the frontier, whether you're going to make it or not.
In this 4-part series, get an inside look on the making of one of the most anticipated titles in gaming history. This is Inside Assassin's Creed 3.
Ever since Europeans arrived in North America, they had been involved in shipping goods back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean. In order to make this economic system work, the British tried to control the goods that are going to the colonies. And it was this goods coming back and forth which made a few places on eastern North America important.
Whether it's the Boston Tea Party or the Boston Massacre. Fire! We have these big historical events that we can situate our game around. All of these events that people have a rough understanding of, but they've really never experienced.
We had to go back and get our historian to find us accurate maps from the era of what Boston and New York looked like. These are actual replicas of the cities.
If you're familiar with those cities, you should have that sort of eerie feeling of finding familiar sights.
We really wanted to push the animations and just make it look like it's a real living world.
As you walk through the crowd, you'll also see animals in the streets.
They'd have a pig, they just clip his ear in a certain way, and they'd let him go in the street. And then he'd eat garbage, and then when it was time to eat the pig, you'd go and find your pig, and you'd slaughter it and eat your pig.
We've got a lot of new ingredients that just bring a new, fresh feeling to the gameplay inside of the cities.
We have these great new stalking zones that you're going to find throughout the cities. It's a great way for you to remain hidden from your enemies and actually be able to sneak up to them so that you could assassinate.
We've got this amazing dynamic weather system in, so we can see not just the time of day passing, but also going in and seeing the same environments not just in the summer, but in the winter as well.
Even though it's a much more condensed area in the city, you actually have to be more careful.
There will be carts moving past, so as you're running along the buildings, escaping some snipers, you'll be able to just dive off into a hay cart that's driving past. You'll be able to jump out of that, free run quickly through the streets, through a building, and jump out the other side. See people inside freaking out as you run past through their kitchen.
Living on the frontier was extremely difficult. Not only did you have harsh winters, cold, freezing temperatures, in the summer you had heat, humidity, so it was a gamble every year that you were out on the frontier whether you're going to make it or not.
For AC3, the biggest difference was just having access to the frontier. So this huge wilderness area that you can sort of explore at your own pace.
It's a forest, the navigation in a very new environment and a very organic environment as well.
In the frontier, you'll be able to navigate through deep snow, but also snow does impact your gameplay. It will slow down you as well as your enemies.
Once we decided that we were going to build the frontier, we realized obviously we need to populate that area. So animals became a very big deal. We have over 24 different species of animals in the game. There's an entire hunting loop that you can engage in. Whenever you're building elements such as animals, you're halfway trying to be real and halfway trying to fulfill that fantasy of what people expect.
One of the great new features we have in the frontier is the new tree running. Connor being really fluid and being able to navigate through the trees. The frontier is really our new playground.
This war at sea was truly a global war and involved not only the British, but the French and the Spanish and the Dutch.
Naval engagement of that period was all about closing the distance.
Boarding is the end game. You've got to be able to close with the enemy, get alongside, then get on board to steal his ship. You want to take that ship intact if you can, because that's where you get your prize. The prize is whatever is on that ship that you want. Naval warfare was absolutely decisive to success in the American Revolution. Commerce comes by sea. At the same time, invaders come by sea. You control the sea and you control the conflict.
It's a huge part of the historical period. The revolution is won pretty much at Yorktown by a blockade of ships.
You know, we can't ignore this part of the history. This is critical. This is something that we have to do. We started a whole team up just to specifically focus on the naval experience.
Naval combat has been a huge challenge. The technology of the wind, the water simulation has been a massive undertaking for the team.
Initially, we didn't even think it was feasible because it's a big moving structure.
It's a full simulation on the high seas where Connor is controlling a ship, he's controlling a crew as well, so he's kind of the master and commander on the ship.
Very exciting. I mean, you are on a moving vessel that is very much part of the sea itself.
This is something that we wanted to engage in and build for the game.
That was a huge challenge that we set ourselves and actually turned out pretty good.
If you haven't played any Assassin's Creed games before, we really think this is a great point to get on board.
It is a new story, it is a new character.
This team is full of people who love making Assassin's Creed, who are delivering just an astoundingly polished and fun experience. As a creator, nothing gets better.
To be frank, it just looks great. Seeing all of this coming together at the end, it's amazing.
For new fans, really, this is about as good as it gets. It's by far the biggest and best Assassins yet.
Must determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. Our cruel and unrelenting enemy leaves us only the choice of brave resistance or the most abject submission. We have, therefore, to resolve to conquer or die.